A Little Known History of Aldrington, East Sussex by Lisa Jayne Fisher. The Prehistoric Origins and the Later Roman Period in Aldrington. There is some activity in the area during the prehistoric period. Brighton Museum has some polished stone axe heads that have been dug from the soil of the parish. These would date to the Neolithic period, at or around 4000 BC. In 1898, workmen digging a trench opposite Aldrington House found a small, socketed, bronze axe alongside a lump of unwrought bronze that contained a high percentage of copper. These Bronze Age artefacts are now in Lewes Museum. There is also evidence of Roman occupation of the area during the Romano-British period, although very little is known of this. Old Shoreham Road is generally accepted as having been a Roman road, with possibly older origins. In 1879, some Roman artefacts were discovered in Aldrington, although unfortunately the precise location was not recorded, but it was most probably in the brickfields. The objects were donated to Brighton Museum and included half a Samian-ware basin and the base of a platter, fragments of flagons and the base of a grey-ware vessel. Aldrington in the Anglo-Saxon period. The English Place Name Society describes Aldrington as being the farm of Elderhays people, which derives from Anglo-Saxon. Other nearby place names, which are also Anglo-Saxon, include Knoll, a round hill, and Wish or Wisk, a meadow, which refers to the area around Wish Park. The Domesday Book mentions that prior to the Norman conquest, Aldrington gave name to 100, of which the eastern half comprised the parishes of Aldrington, Hangleton and Portslade. A few yards west of Boundary Road, which runs between Portslade and Hove, a Saxon cemetery was discovered. The monks of the Great Cluniac Priory of St Pancras, Lewes, owned land in the parish at Estfield juxta Aldrington. There is no evidence of any earlier ecclesiastical buildings in Aldrington other than St Leonard's Church. It is possible that a church stood on this site in pre-conquest days, and if that were the case, then it was probably a wooden structure. In 1402, the Church of Aldrington was dedicated to St Leonard, a French hermit of the 6th century, who became the patron saint of Sussex and of prisoners. A pair of heraldic leg irons, or shackles, are depicted on the Hove coat of arms to represent Aldrington. The coat of arms of Hove Council includes emblems of Hove. The first quarter shield is dedicated to St Andrew's Church. The second quarter shows shackles on a red field denoting St Leonard, the patron saint of all prisoners. The lower section of arms represents the de Warham family, the rape of Lewis, and 6 martlets, the emblems of Sussex. The ship represents a 16th century French galley commemorating French attacks on the coast of Hove. The motto was Floriet Hove, may Hove flourish. Aldrington in the medieval and early post-medieval period. The Church of St Leonard was built in the mid-12th century. It is certainly the oldest building in the area. There would have been a medieval settlement associated with the church, but all of these buildings and traces of settlement have gone. Sometime before 1397, the Church of St Leonard's had its own ecclesiastical hermit, known as an anchorite. He was the Reverend William Bole, formerly the rector of St Leonard's. He was immersed in his cell, which was purpose-built within the graveyard, living on the plainest food and dressed in the simplest clothing. The earliest parts of the church fell into a ruinous state during the 16th century. The Gentleman's Magazine of 1792 reported a local tradition of French raids with cottages in Aldrington being burnt down. It is well known that the French conducted raids on Brighton and the neighbourhood in 1514, when Brighton was burnt to a cinder and again in 1545. In fact, my father once unearthed a cannonball in the garden of number 70 St Leonard's Road. The regrowth of Aldrington. The Victorian housing development in Aldrington was built on fields mostly belonging to Red House Farm, although they were originally belonged to Aldrington Manor. Red House was situated in what later became Station Road, occupying the site now covered by the United Reformed Church and part of St Albans Road. Hugh Fuller was initially the tenant and later became the owner of Red House Farm. It later became a private school up until 1909. In 1086, Aldrington had a population of 73, and this remained the highest figure until 1881, when the population had risen to 144. From 1801 to 1831, nobody lived in the parish at all, and the one person recorded in 1841 was most probably the toll house keeper. Apparently he had a peg leg, and so it could be argued that Aldrington had 3/4 of an inhabitant. The London, Brighton and South Coast Railway was built in 1844. Cooper's Gap was later renamed Portslade by Sea. Kelly's Directory also noted in 1867 that a canal and floating basin in connection with Shoreham Harbour were constructed for the convenience of the coal and general trade of Brighton and its neighbourhood. The population in 1861 was 7. The area is 776 acres, nearly the whole of which belongs to Hugh Ingram Esquire. The population began to grow in the 1870s when new houses were built, and by 1891 the population had risen to 2,238. In 1891 a poll was taken to decide whether Hove and Aldrington should be amalgamated. This was passed and took place on 26th of September 1893. At the end of the 19th century stood a gibbet where the easternmost houses of Elm Drive now stand. A man called James Rooke was hanged here for robbing the mail coach nearby. The story of the efforts of his distracted mother to collect his bones and bury them in Old Shoreham churchyard is apparently well known through Tennyson's Rizpah.